For Garrett, his sensitivities about nature are acute. His eyes have already seen nature in the raw, with many obvious questions answered before he had time to actually read about it in a book. As far back as he can remember, his family has worked with orphaned wildlife, and so his understanding of biology was hands-on there too. Thanks in part to a special book written by a Dr. Max Gerson, he understood how important it is to feed a young creature such as this porcupine the right mix of foods, or that creature would succumb quickly, especially in its first few days of life. Regular visits to our neighbor Bob provided this unpasteurized goat's milk. No store could legally supply this. Bob's wife, Margaret, is recovering from breast cancer. But she recently heard from Garrett about Dr. Gerson, and then word spread in the community about this Gerson therapy. People that were deeply impacted positively included the mayor, the local electrician, the banker, the Hammer Museum guy. Then there was the beekeeper, who saw links to the Gerson therapy that extended even to the health and productivity of his bees. There was also the artist, the people at the organic store, and then a Gerson tape was obtained.
There are laws against healing cancer. The doctor is not allowed to try anything else. He must use only those treatments that have already proven to be failures. Imagine what we could do if this could be accepted. But there are laws against it. You're not allowed to heal. There's too much money to be made on drugs.
For Garrett's diabetic neighbor John, this message came too late to save his legs. But perhaps Bob, the milkman, had the best observation about the Gerson therapy.
What I'd like to see is some proof, some good scientific proof.
If you think of basically what's in Gerson therapy, you really wouldn't expect it to cure cancer. So no, I don't think there's any evidence that anybody's ever been cured by Gerson therapy.
It's not right from any aspect at all.
Well, has the Gerson therapy ever cured a cancer patient?
Oh, of course not. They won't even release their records.
There's absolutely no scientific evidence that he's cured anyone. You know, I've never interviewed any Gerson patients. It really is pointless.
But I had interviewed patients, and more than a couple. These patients had recovered from every type of cancer, and for many of them it was terminal. Orthodox medicine had given up on them and sent them all home to die. Some of them published books about their recoveries. I traveled all over the world, from Holland to Japan, and everywhere it was the same result: recovery. And even heart arteries can be restored. When Prince Charles spoke publicly in favor of the Gerson therapy after observing its effectiveness, he was skewered by the medical community. Nevertheless, I had observed his unwavering sentiments in a letter that was sent to the Gerson Institute. Charlotte Gerson routinely gives lectures about her father's famous therapy all over the world.
Dr. Gerson said 2 basic things are toxicity and deficiency.
Garrett was on the right track with his homeschool schedule, and what he had just seen drew him in even deeper. Now the world began to appear slightly more complicated to him. As he studied various magazine articles about the increasing incidence of cancer, he searched curiously and exhaustively for any mention of Dr. Gerson's therapy within mainstream media sources. Instead, what he discovered within the pages of any given article about cancer or chronic disease was a different approach to the crises, one that made him suspicious. Garrett wanted to learn more, and to his delight, the Gerson family sent him some long-forgotten film reels. Dr. Gerson's image with his family came to life. was the discovery of footage of Charlotte Gerson in her 20s that captured his imagination within the historical reference of the where, why, and how this family eventually ended up in the United States from Germany. As a young doctor in Germany, Max Gerson's inspiration was Hungarian medical researcher Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, who discovered that if physicians simply washed their hands between delivering babies, women would no longer die of infections. He was severely ridiculed for the suggestion. Ridicule followed Gerson as well after he discovered a cure for his migraine headaches and then tuberculosis by changing the diet. A clinical trial was undertaken with 450 incurable skin tuberculosis patients. None of them recovered at first, and Gerson was devastated. But then it was discovered that a nurse was sneaking pastries, beer, and sausages to the patients. The Gerson diet was then strictly followed, leading to the recovery of 446 of the 450 patients. Then, he discovered it cured cancer. In World War II, Gerson was able to flee Nazi persecution with his family to the United States. He continued to not only cure cancer, but other chronic diseases too. And when his close friend Dr. Albert Schweitzer suffered from diabetes, he cured Dr. Schweitzer as well, leading Schweitzer to assess and declare that Gerson was, quote, the most eminent genius in medical history. In July of 1946, Senator Claude Pepper held Senate subcommittee hearings over Dr. Gerson's cancer therapy. The astounding testimony was quickly reported by ABC News commentator Raymond Graham Swing over ABC Radio. The public's reaction was swift and favorable, but the broadcast resulted in the firing of Raymond Graham Swing 2 weeks later due to severe pressure by the pharmaceutical and American medical establishment.
I was investigated 5 times.
What do you mean by being investigated, sir?
From the EMA.
They investigated you?
Yes, 5 times. Every time they come, I show them, here the patient you sent home to die, cured. Other patient, you sent home to die, cured. Next patient, you sent home to die, cured.
And cure he did, including people with muscular dystrophy like this young girl. Dr. Gerson's public lectures about his therapy were unpopular amongst his peers. For example, Gerson had spoken out against tobacco since 1920.
Time out for many men of medicine usually means just long enough to enjoy a cigarette. And because they know what a pleasure it is to smoke a mild, good-tasting cigarette, they're particular about the brand they choose. In a repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel. Yes, according to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Why not change to Camels for the next 30 days and see what a difference it makes in your smoking enjoyment? See how Camels agree with your throat. See how mild and good tasting a cigarette can be.
And as more layers of the therapy were uncovered and understood, it was becoming clear to Garrett why there was such opposition to Gerson's therapy of caring for health.
The tobacco industry was the main source of advertising for the American Medical Association at that time.
Philip Morris was the Journal of American Medical Association's major source of advertising revenue. The editor of that journal, Dr. Morris Fishbein, attacked Dr. Max Gerson for, quote, treating cancer patients with diet and warning them against cigarettes. Fishbein originally aspired to become a professional clown, yet he never practiced a day of medicine or treated a single patient in his entire career.
Today it's no different. Chemical and pharmaceutical companies now run the American Medical Association and the FDA. The thing that bugs me is that people think the FDA is protecting them. It isn't. What the FDA is doing and what the public thinks it's doing are as different as night and day. A quote from Herbert Lade, the former commissioner of the FDA.
In the end, generations of unbridled anarchy exacted the ultimate toll upon the earth. Through war, pestilence, disease, and abominations of insanity and avarice, millions were reduced to thousands, thousands to hundreds, hundreds to but a few, the few to one, the last man left.
The nightmare ends with me!